So, hi and good morning. I hope everyone is doing good and well. So, in the previous video, we have spoken about a very basic topic called personality theories. So, I hope that you have watched that video, and I think this would be the last video on the basis of psychology. And from the next video onwards, we would be diving deep into fields of psychology, but I'll keep the videos as simple as I can. So, for today's video, we would be talking about motivations. So, here's the thing that this might not look a topic of psychology, but it is one of our crucial stepping stones in the field of psychology because somewhat it is related to your behavior and your perception of how you see and what you do for the reason. So I thought that this might be one of the greatest topic to just ponder upon. So in this video about motivation, we would be understanding what is uh, intrinsic and what is extrinsic motivation. We would understand the characteristics of them. We would try to understand them as a real life example. We would understand what is the science behind it, and then we would also compare both of this extrinsic and intrinsic motivation. After that, we will understand the impact of motivation in different settings like workplace, education, relationship, and personal goals. And after that, by the end, we will discuss about how to balance your uh, extrinsic and intrinsic motivation, what are the strategies for it, and how to increase your intrinsic motivation. After the balancing part, we would be ending it with scientific studies and the research paper involved in this specific topic. So without like any delay, we would just jump on the topic. So I have some work here and there. I would be doing that thing, as well as I would be talking, I would be communicating with you. So today I think the lighting is not okay, but yeah, we would be certainly going without that. So the question that arises in your mind when I say about motivation or something like that is, what is motivation? So this might be a very eternal question, that what is motivation, because a lot of time we certainly take some rubbish ideologies, rubbish thoughts, and turn or tell them as motivation. But what is actually motivation? So in a very simpler term, in a very specified terms, I would say motivation is something that is an internal or an external drive that compels us to act, to persist, to achieve things. So try to understand, it is an invisible engine that is inside you, where your mind is something that seeks out a fuel, which it's kind of a fuel, but it won't act because the engine is still not yet started. So for that engine to start, you need a trigger, you need to just wind up that key, and that key is nothing but the motivation. Your engine is your actions, and your mind is a fuel. So understand that while you are sitting here, some of you might be thinking of that they want to achieve greatness, or why is their struggle not yet started? Because even to start an action, you need some kind of trigger, you need some kind of uh, drive that catches you towards it. So at the core, motivation answers only one question, that why do we do what we want to do? Simple as that. Let's say I want to study mathematics. Why do I want to study mathematics? The question of why is being answered with this subtle explanation. Why does it drives us to learn mathematics? Maybe I want to learn something new. Maybe I just want to clear my math. Maybe I have an exam to attempt, that's why I'm learning math. Or maybe I need to jot on a very important topic for which I need math as a base topic. So motivation itself is a question that has two answers, and those two answers are in a very powerful dimension. Try to understand they are into very powerful dimension, which is intrinsic motivation and extrinsic motivation. Now we will deep dive into both of this. First, we will try to understand what is intrinsic motion and what is extrinsic motion. Please, my throat is not doing well, and let's just talk. So, for anyone who is new to this, so understand, usually when we watch YouTube videos or we watch some kind of podcast or we watch some kind of documentary, we often hear about someone that something motivated me, or the drive was for me was to get out of that action or get out of from that situation. Now the drive is nothing but the motivation, and in the case of intrinsic motivation, it is an inner drive to do something for its own sake. Let's say I need to run a marathon. So what kind of motivation I would give to myself? I would simply say that let's start it from a very base. Let's say I have to compete for a 10-kilometer marathon. So would I try with a 10-kilometer practice run? No, not at all. I'll start it from a very basic. For initial 1 week, I would just try to make my body adaptable. By doing what? By doing simple leg exercises, by doing lunges, by doing sit-ups, by doing crunches. So my body gets used to the kind of rigorous wear and tear. For the next second week, what I'll do? I'll start running. But will I run 10 kilometers straight? No. I'll start from very base, which is like 1.5 kilometer or 2 kilometers max. Once my body is used to that 2 kilometer, the third week I would go for 4 kilometer run. In third week, if I'm getting used to the 4 kilometer run, then in the fourth week I would go for a 6 kilometer or a 7 kilometer run, or 7.5 kilometer run. And by the end of fifth week, I would be doing a complete 4 kilometer run or a marathon, so that like my complete month would be utilized in such a manner. For that, the motivation would not be hyping me up by some bullshit podcast, by some bullshit lecture or something, but to take tedious action against it, to take minute actions, not tedious but very minute actions which are doable, actions which are performable. So now when you have a drive for your own sake, because you find it fulfilling, you find it enjoyable, you find it meaningful, not because of external reward or pleasure. Now for you, running a 10-kilometer marathon might be just an example that you want to set for yourself, that yes, you are healthy, you are fit, and you can do it because your body can endure that kind of stress, or your body can endure that type of stigma. Okay, so when the journey isn't about a reward, it's all about just fulfillment, it is called as intrinsic motivation. Now I'll give one more example. Let's say a child spending hours building a sand castle, not for a prize but just for joy of creating it, or a coder, a developer staying up all night perfecting the algorithm, not for a paycheck but just for the thrill of doing things, solving a problem, solving a dead end where he finds that if this algorithm is right, or if this code is right, my program might run efficiently, my program might look good, my program can be processable. Okay, so psychologists Deci and Ryan describes intrinsic motivation as a state where behavior arises naturally from the fulfillment but not from the reward. The fulfillment of three core psychological needs. First is autonomy, second is completeness, and third is relatedness or relativeness. Okay, so what is autonomy in this? So the feeling in control of your actions, or the feeling of having the complete complete control on yourself is called autonomy. Mastering challenges and skill is called competency. I'm sorry that I told completeness, but it is competency. So we have three pillars, which is autonomy, competency, and relativeness. And third, when you find that connection is meaningful with others, with yourself, then it is relativeness. So this is intrinsic motivation as a definition. So there might be some characteristics of intrinsic motivation too. So I'll just jot four characteristics. First is your autonomy and your freedom. Autonomy and freedom. Second is passion and curiosity. Third is resilience, and fourth is timeless engagement. So you feel very empowered to choose and control your actions without the external pressure, without external expectations and judgment. So that is nothing but autonomy and freedom. Intrinsic motivation thrives when you are passionate, when you are utterly curious to know what you want to do or what are you doing. Curiosity is a fuel that gives you the need of exploration and learning, and this is what passion and curiosity is all about. This is an important characteristics for any kind of motivation, but in the case of intrinsic motivation, if you don't have passion, if you don't have curiosity, you would never do that action at all. People motivated intrinsic people motivated intrinsically tends to perceive, even when the tasks are challenging, the tasks are very brutal, because their satisfaction isn't tied to the outcome of that action, but to the effort and the growth that they'll get after doing that action. So this is something where resilience is built in intrinsic motivation. Now, for the people who engage themselves into intrinsic motivation, hours pass like minutes when you are motivated like intrinsically. You enter into a state of flow, in a state of action, where the term coined by psychologist Milhe, now it's a very difficult word, I would just say Milhe, where where you are completely absorbed in that activity. So now what we understand from this is that when you fuel yourself with an positive outcome, where reward isn't your end goal, but the satisfaction and fulfillment of that action is some kind of pleasure or some kind of dopamine for you, then it is called an intrinsic motivation. Now I'll give you some real life example of intrinsic motivation. So in education, a student delving into history or psychology out of fascination, or the student who is very into philosophy, they basically do these actions not because they would be getting a Fields medal or they would be getting recognition out of it. No, because it's their utter fascination about the topic. If you're talking about history, you're talking about civilizations, you are talking about empires, you are talking about the politics behind the history that has gone. You are talking about people who have ruled for their agenda. If you are talking about, let's say, philosophy, you are talking about the work, the ideology, the thought process of the writers, the philosophers. It is not something that you get rewarded for, it's something you are so fascinated that you are utterly in the love of action. In work, let's say a businessman, a developer, or an entrepreneur is solving a problem not because he is getting an end reward or he is getting a huge big funding or investment out of it, but because if this idea works, it would create an impact, it would bring a change, it would bring a positive outlook towards the world, it would bring a lot on the table, offering new opportunities. In the field of art and creation, understanding this crucial part, that let's say for an example, a musician is practicing endlessly, not because he is trying to learn somebody's characteristics. Let's say a person who is trying to understand to learn piano is not because he wants to become a Mozart or he wants to become Beethoven. He wants to become him. These are the basic foundations that he is trying to learn. But if he is so he is so motivated intrinsically, he might be the one who would be leading something beautiful. And in personal growth, someone is running each morning. It's not because he wants to run a marathon or he wants to compete in a sprint race. He just wants to keep his body fit. He wants to keep himself healthy. He wants to keep himself uplifted. So these are certain real life examples. I'll talk about the science behind it. I think this might be going way long. So the science behind it, psychology and neurosciences have unrevealed that the biological and the physiological processes that underpin intrinsic motivation. First is your reward system. Second is your dopamine. Third is your neural correlated flow in your brain. Then there is something called Deci and Ryan self determination theory. So it is called SDT. So this was a groundbreaking research that emphasizes on the role of autonomy, competency, and relativeness, which is used in fostering intrinsic motivation. Example, that workers are given autonomy to perform better. They reported a higher kind of satisfaction, gratitude towards when they were micromanaged. So there are certain kind of sciences behind it. Even when we are talking about dopamine and reward pathways, try to understand, when you do something just for the sake of joy, you are uplifted, you are very happy, you are fulfilled. During intrinsic motivation or engagement, the prefrontal cortex quiets down, reducing self-criticism, and it tries to enhance your focus and creativity. So now, how to foster intrinsic motivation? Simple. Align yourself with a purpose. Try to embrace autonomy. Focus on growth, not on reward, but on growth. Understand curiosity is a key. Create a state of flow within yourself and try to build yourself in such a way that you hang out with a community who has same ideologies and same goals. Okay. Now, we would be talking about extrinsic motivation. So, what is extrinsic motivation? Now, this is where the game flips down. So, let's say extrinsic motivation is something or a behavior driven by external influence or external rewards or consequences. This could be money, this could be grades, this could be recognition, this could be kind of avoiding punishment or anything that you like. Unlike intrinsic motivation, where activity is itself rewarding, extrinsic motion often focuses on outcome rather than the process itself. Example, a student studying hard, not to get good grades but to get scholarship. That's the end goal. Then an employee meeting targets not on the sales but on promotion. That's the end goal. A person going to the gym, not to get fit but to complete the fitness challenge. That's the end goal. So what are the characteristics of this? Simple. There are four characteristics. First is your first basic. What does extrinsic motivation means? It's a goal oriented behavior. Second, short term versus long term. I'll tell you what is it. Then tangible and intangible rewards. Fourth is your influence on external system. Let's say your actions are guided by rewards. It is guided by end result. That's the biggest characteristic. It is a goal oriented characteristic. Okay. Often effective for achieving short term goals, it is used. Extrinsic motivation is always used for attaining short term goals, not for the long term goals. Let's say you get a promotion. Does that promotion stick forever? No, it's for 6 months, it's for 3 months, it's for a year. But soon after that period ends, you will do the same thing again. You would work, you would work not for the sales, or not for the sake of working, for the sake of knowledge, but you will work for the sake of money. You will seek for the sake of motivation, sake of your promotion. Okay. Tangible and intangible rewards. Try to understand, even when we are talking about extrinsic motivation, there are rewards. Now, what is tangible? Where you get value out of it. It might be a prize, it might be money, it might be trophy, it might be gifts. What is intangible reward? Praise, approval, applause, social status, social knowing. So, does it has influence on external system? Yes. When your whole idea of motivation is to get cherished and get acknowledged by the people, then social norms, expectations, structures often plays an important role in like in cultivating that unholistic environment around you. What are the real life examples? For an education point of perspective, a student is studying for getting a scholarship, not for marks, then yeah, that's an extrinsic motivation. An employee working for the promotion, for the raise, that's an extrinsic motion. Doesn't matter, he has knowledge, or he is getting an understanding of what the work he's trying to do. But if he's doing for promotion and raise, that's an extrinsic motivation. An athlete who is competing to get a gold medal, or to be top of his game, he isn't focusing in the right direction. His motivation is to get something, not to achieve something. Getting something is temporary, achieving something is permanent. Understanding the spirit of sport, understanding the technique of sport, that would stick for permanency. It is permanency. But working out for getting a gold medal, working out to beat someone, that's an extrinsic motivation. So, social media, content creators posting regularly to gain what? Recognition, to get followers, to get likes, to get views, and to get deals. Does it has impact on long term? No. There are very certain creators who post not for the sake of it, but for the sake to enhance, to bring something on the table. Maybe it might be societal, maybe it might be a long term thing, but 90%, on I would say 99% of the influencers, they do the same thing, which is to back big deals, is to get numbers, is to get recognition. At the end of the day, when they go back to sleep, they have no sense of achievement, they have no sense of happiness, no sense of fulfillment, no sense of satisfaction. Try to understand, this isn't just a topic of academia, or this isn't a topic of a debate. It's a topic of life, where we have to know and understand what are we doing and why are we doing in the first place. What is the science behind extrinsic motivation? Simple. You are your you have an operant behavior, or you have an operant conditioning. The role of dopamine is certain, it is an external reward. Then you have cell SDT. So I'll go on basic thing. So B.F. Skinner, he had a theory about operant conditioning, behavior that are shaped by environment, maybe positive rewards or negative, like punishments and avoiding punishments. Example: employee who meets sales target, achieving bonuses, are more likely to continue the meeting in those targets. On the other hand, the person who is leading a technical team, he might not get bonuses. Why? He might get a promotion, he might not get bonuses, because his role is a long term thing. For a sales guy, his role is target, like deadline associated thing. So, the role of dopamine: external reward activates brain's reward pathway, releasing dopamine and reinforcing this behavior. Example: receiving an applause after the presentation boosts confidence and motivation. This is a temporary thing. Then, even like I talked about Deci and Ryan, who proposed this SDT, self-determination theory, emphasized that while extrinsic motivation is effective, it becomes more sustainable when it is aligned with intrinsic motivation. And there are some research studies that studies on the workplace, where employees who receive financial incentives show impressive short-term performance, but adding Recognition boosts a long-term effect. So now when we have spoke about this both things, we would just understand what is the difference between it. So like for a intrinsic motivation, it is kind of a fire within you. Okay, the drive fuels you for personal satisfaction, not for the reward. On the other hand, in an extrinsic motivation, it's the external pleasure, it's an external stimuli that is triggering you out, it's pushing you to the limit. Example, reading a book. Why? Because you love that author, because you love his ideology. Reading a case study or reading a scientific paper. Why? Because you want to ace an exam, because you want to get a good grade. Now, other example, working, working for knowledge. Yeah, intrinsic motivation. Working for bonuses, extrinsic motivation. So, what is the interplay between extrinsic and intrinsic motivation? So, in intrinsic, you are not awarded with some kind of internal reward or end result. You just get to do that work and you're good to go. I'm sorry about the light, it's flickering a lot. Yeah, it's done. Now it's done. So, huh, what we are talking about, what is the interplay between these two? So, in the case of intrinsic motivation, the reward isn't something or uh, a thing itself. It is the sheer motivation that drives you towards that thing. And in extrinsic, it might be the reward, it might be tangible reward, it might be intangible reward. And try to understand that the over justification effect also plays an important term into it. Ironically, too much of external reward can sometimes undermine the intrinsic motivation. There is a research done by Deci in 1971 showed that when people were paid to solve puzzles they initially enjoyed, their intrinsic motivation, interest decreased once the rewards just stop coming inside it. There is a synergy between these two kind of motivation that it happens like a doctor passionate about saving lives also receives societal respect and financial stability, reinforcing their commitment. Now, why am I giving this? Try to understand 50% of our actions are somewhat a balance between these two motivations. So, until we have a complete balance, it's okay. But we should always try to keep our mind, or keep in mind that most of the action should be intrinsic motivation or driven towards intrinsic part. Why? Because you are not never fixated on a reward or an end goal or an end purpose itself. You are fixated upon your own satisfaction. Let's say if this thing doesn't works out, if this thing goes to sham, if this thing goes down the water, you don't have to worry a lot, because by the end of this goal or by the end of this task, you have already done a pretty good job understanding this thing or understanding the key features of this thing. So let's say if this thing doesn't work, the next time when you do this thing, you would understand what kind of key pointers were there, what were the negative pointers were there. Based on those negative factors, you would work on those and try to change the game completely down to up to down. So, what are the impact of motivation on the behavior? There are three key impacts. I would say your performance is a key factor. Second is your decision making, and third is your persistence. Now, it determines your priorities. Any kind of motivation, it determines your priority. It guides towards it. You tend to take choices that align to your goals. So your decision making power also increases by the time. When you are highly motivated or when you are so driven towards your goal, you become more focused, you become more engaged, you become more towards the peace, towards the equilibrium, and that's where your performance increases, your performance try to boost out. Sometimes it helps you to push through obstacle, and not sometimes, in the most of the cases it tries to push you towards the obstacle. It may be physical, it may be mental, or it may be just emotional, but this is where you develop persistence against those things. Now motivation or lack of it doesn't shape what we are or what we do, but it defines who we become. So I have pretty much given everything. Now there is something called no, no. So I would say I have completed the whole impact. We'll just try to understand how to maintain the balance. Now, try to understand motivation itself is something that is practiced, is not learned, or it is not a skill set that you own from your childhood. It is something that you practice. You get better and better after a certain amount of time when you inculcate practice and self determination in it. So try to understand that whenever you are trying to do something, put your heart into it, not your mind into it. Let's say you are trying to do a task which is kind of tedious, which is kind of hard, but what drives you to do that thing shouldn't be the goal, or shouldn't be the end result that has a reward. It should be more towards what kind of satisfaction you would feel after doing that task. So this is where the motivation part of intrinsic and extrinsic motivation comes. Neither form of motivation is inherently superior, but relying on it too heavily can lead to pitfalls. So over resilience on extrinsic motivation diminishes creativity and the joy of doing it. People may become reward dependent every single time. This will create a sense in them for losing interest into things, and they would always focus on reward itself. Over resilience in intrinsic motivation will neglect pragmatic needs like earning or living a life or meeting social expectations. So there should be a balance. Balancing both of them creates sustainable sustainability, where extrinsic motivation rewards you for your task and intrinsic motivation rewards you for the satisfaction. Now, strategies for balancing both of them out is start with self awareness. This is the only key. Determination is the second part, but self awareness should be inculcated. Reflect on your actions, what truly matters for you. Identify activities where you naturally feel joy, where you naturally feel happiness, and those you who rely on extrinsic rewards, try to understand those are temporary. You need those, but those are temporary. So your primary focus should be on enjoying the journey, not on achieving that goal. Okay, it would eventually achieve itself, but the goal should be to have fun while doing that thing. So building a habit or overcoming inertia is also one of the key pointers to reframe external motivation as a tool. So I am not saying external motivation is your enemy or some kind of stepping stone for your success, but use it to build habits, use it to overcome inertia, use deadlines or recognition to spark action on the task that feels daunting to you, that don't align to your long term goals, but they do align with the short term goals. And small rewards for completing your task or daily workouts or your routine would really help you for creating or building better habits. Now try to understand, focus on the purpose and master that purpose, not to achieve that goal and become the master of the end goal. A teacher might initially teach for paychecks, but when he finds a joy of educating someone or enlightening someone, there is where the student succeeds and the teacher accomplished the main goal or the main purpose of his life. Try to understand, any kind of motivation or any kind of action always needs autonomy. Why? Because if you don't allow your choices, when you don't allow yourself to make choices or make decisions that are going to bring some stability or some kind of joy or some kind of action in you, you can never live your life fully. and try to shift narratives. Don't do actions for someone is expecting out of you. Do the actions for what you want to do. Now, there are two motivations. First is gamifying routines, and second is extrinsic goals and intrinsic motivation. So, have fun while doing things, even in the mundane works like cleaning the house, doing your chores, and even making love with your friend. You never know. So, tips to increase your motivation or kind of intrinsic motivation: cultivate curiosity. This is a key role. Unless and until you don't have a curious mindset or a very overcoming attitude towards the things to learn, you would never seek any kind of motivation in the first place. Always maintain the state of flow when you are in the state of motivation, because if your state of flow gets turbulent, you might slip into analysis paralysis situation where you would judge yourself whether to do this thing or not. So don't ever lose your state of flow or lose your cool yourself. Connect with the core values. Try to understand why are you doing it, for not what you are doing it. Okay, don't go on the end goal. Focus on why are you doing this thing. Practice gratitude. It often happens. It happens with me also. When I try to do some tasks, I go very brutal on me. I go very rough on me, and that's not a right path. Unless and until you should have self empathy, self gratitude towards yourself, towards others, your task is done. Your task is, and always try to understand. Life is all about inspiration, and you get inspired when you are surrounded with the people who are good, who have a great understanding, and who are inspired themselves. So have that circle where you are uplifted. So I think we have spoken about everything, and we'll now end this topic with some scientific studies and research on intrinsic and extrinsic motivation. So first is your SDT, which is self-determination theory, which is given by Dacey and Ryan, and it was given, I don't know when. The core premises was that the human motivation operates on a spectrum from intrinsic to extrinsic motion or motivation that is influenced by three initiate physiological needs, which is autonomy, competence, and your relativeness. Okay, the key study was intrinsic and extrinsic reward. Dacey did an experiment. She conducted an experiment in colleges for the students who were solving these puzzles. So group 1 was paid for solving puzzles and group 2 was not paid. They were just encouraged to solve the puzzles. What were the findings? That once the payment stopped, the intrinsic motivation of group 1 was diminished and the group 2 continued working. What was the conclusion? That external reward can undermine the intrinsic motivation, a phenomena called as over-justification effect. The second study was the over-justification effect, undermining the intrinsic motivation. So this study was done by Lepper, Green and Nasbet in 1973. Experiment was that children who loved drawing were split in three groups. First were promised a reward for drawing, second were not told a reward but received one unexpectedly, and third was no reward at all. What was the result? So children in the first group lost interest in drawing over time, while other groups maintained their determination or enthusiasm. What was the insight from this experiment? That rewarding an already enjoyable activity can shift your focus from enjoyment to external incentives, reducing intrinsic drive. So third study was about intrinsic motivation in education, which was done by Gottfried in 1990. So what was the objective? To investigate the link between intrinsic motivation and academic success in children. What are the findings? Children with high intrinsic motivation had greater long-term academic achievements, and intrinsic motivation predicted intellectual curiosity and self-regulated learning. So now we have spoke about everything, and there are a notable studies. So I would just name it out: extrinsic motivation and workplace performance. The study was done by Eisenberger and Cameron in 1996. The objective was to re-evaluate the claims about negative effect of extrinsic reward, and the conclusion was that extrinsic motivation works best aligned with intrinsic value, such a purpose or the recognition for the effort. The fifth was motivation in sports and athletics, done by Deci and Ryan in 1985. The objective was to understand how intrinsic and extrinsic motivation affects athlete. The sixth study was done in neurosciences of motivation, done by Moriam 80 in 2010. The objective was to explore how reward impacts brain activity. And seventh was blending intrinsic and extrinsic motivation, done by Seros, Nicklen and Ford in 2014. The analysis was to analyze 40 years of data, and the conclusion was the interplay between the intrinsic and the extrinsic motivation, which was something about not a reward but a pleasure. The I think the last was practical application, engaging intrinsic and extrinsic motivation. And I think there are some key research paper. First was Deci and Ryan, who did this research paper on intrinsic motivation and self-determination in human behavior, which explored SDT and implication across the various fields. Then there was Lepper, Green and Nesbitt. In 1973, they did a research on undermining children intrinsic interest with external rewards, which we already spoke. And third was Nicklin, Ford and Sarah Soli in 2014. The research was in intrinsic motivation and extrinsic intensive jointly predict performance, which was a 40-year-old metadata. So now when we have spoke of all of this, I think we have came to an end of this video. Yeah, we have came to an end of this video. So as we have seen that motivation isn't about a binary choices between intrinsic and extrinsic motivation or extrinsic forces, but it is a symphony of both. So reflect on your own life, where you can amplify your intrinsic motivation. Surround yourself with the people who are very cheerful, who are very bright, and who are really uplifting. Now, the science of motivation isn't just a theory or an academy, it's a tool of transformation. It's a tool that you can transform yourself from within, from outside. When you understand what drives you, you will unlock the potential to your own self, not just to succeed, but to thrive on passion and purpose. So, I think today we have completed this topic with a good motivation itself. So I would end this topic in here, and this was the last topic of our series. Not just last topic, it was the basic topics of our series. Now we would be getting into the complex topics. So from the next video we would be diving a little bit deeper and little bit more on important topics. So I hope that you watch these videos and you reflect on yourself, because psychology or any kind of study isn't just a study of academia, it's an art of living. And when I'm talking about psychology is certainly an art of living, where you can practically inculcate this newfound theories into yourself, and you can create a better version of yourself. So I would rest and end this topic in here today. I hope you enjoyed this, and I'll do one thing. I'll add all the research paper and scientific findings into the description. You can just go and read it out and expand your knowledge, expand your understanding on this topic. And I think this is all for today. I'll take your leave, and you take care, you eat healthy, you stay healthy, you surround yourself with mindful and thoughtful people who inspires you and who encourages you to take bold actions and to take calculative actions for your own development. The people who motivates you towards passion, and you seek towards passion and purpose. Till then, take care and goodbye, I guess.